Welcome back to Ultralets podcast, episode 15, and I'm here today with Simon Young. And I'm with a solicitor today who's not on the clock, I believe. I thought I'd just double check. You're not going to bill me for this, are you, Simon? Because I know you guys charge quite a bit for an hourly rate. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Simon.
Thanks for having me.
I'm sure a lot of our viewers, particularly in the Hull area, if they're interested in property or involved in property, will probably know who you are from Humber Landlords Association. And you might have dealt with the odd eviction for them over the years.
The odd one, yeah.
So I'd just really like to set the scene with you, Simon, if that's all right, and just understand who you are, how you got into law, a bit about you. What have you got to tell me?
Yeah, so it was a bit of an accident, really. I say accident. I left uni. I did business studies at uni. Complete waste of time that was.
Right.
Not that it's a bad degree. Caveat that. But I just did it because I fell into it, I think. And I left uni, went travelling for a little bit, and then it was like I need a job. And I got into a firm just sort of doing like an admin job. And then after sort of like a couple of years, someone had said, you really should try and qualify. This was probably about 2009 or something like that. And I was with a guy called James Burrell, actually. He was my first like supervisor. He was brilliant, really encouraged me to do it.
Use a lot.
Yeah, he was like a partner at the time, so he sort of pushed me to do it, really said, look, you should do this.
Is this in Hull?
Yeah,
Right.
So he basically pushed me to do it, and then I ended up having to do like a law degree in the LPC in my part-time that took 4 years, weekends and evenings for 4 years on top of a full-time job. So
Fair play to you.
after you've committed to that, you just think, got to do it now.
I'm all in.
I'm all in, yeah. So I got into it, and then obviously just went from there. And then just, lucky really, I think, with James Legal. I think sometimes you just find a fit sometimes that works.
So you joined James Legal when?
2014,
Right.
I think it was.
Because you're
about 10 years now.
managing director of James
Yeah,
Legal, aren't you now? So
yeah.
is that more of a business management role as well as practicing law like you do?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, it's typically, my time would be split probably between fee earning and general managing, with a view to in the long term probably moving away from just fee earning,
Right.
Working on the business more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say at the moment it's sort of 50-50 really.
Because that's one thing from an outsider's perspective that I notice about James Legal is you are quite a dynamic sort of young business, probably a bit like Ultralets really, but within the legal space.
Yeah.
And people do notice you on things like social media and the like, which a lot of your competitors probably aren't taking that seriously. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, people have started a lot more, haven't they? Especially since COVID. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
COVID was like, not a disaster for us on many levels, but we've always had sort of like flexible approach to working, and we've had like, not sort of like strict, rigid office times. People tend to come and go as they please, work from home and things like that. So that was quite a USP for us before COVID. And then obviously COVID came along. Now every firm's like, well, work from home and come in when you like, sort of thing, because they've had to.
Yeah.
Because staff are like, well, why would I not work from home some days?
That other company won't make me do it.
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
did
not
that
gonna-
for 6 months during COVID, and it worked just fine. So it has sort of, it's caught people up a little bit in terms of what your staff expect when they come to a job. But yeah, I mean,
Would you say on balance people are performing better now they've got flexibility or not?
well, we've always probably found that.
Right.
I think if you say to someone you've got to be in at 9, no later than 9 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever, and then you've got to stay till 5, they'll tend to stick to those hours rigorously, and they'll refuse to move past them. And they won't do stuff in an evening or early on, and they'll sort of really dislike the environment.
Yeah.
If you say to someone, well, come and go as you please, as long as the numbers are right and the clients are happy and the service is good, you can, in theory, work from wherever you need to work.
I think the problem there lies how do you actually enforce things when things aren't getting done properly. That is when it gets a little bit more complicated. I think we'd all like that idealistic world, and I'd love to have it myself where people can do that. But when it doesn't work quite right, that's when it becomes an issue, in my opinion, anyway. But
I think the key for us has always been the recruitment. I mean, we're very careful in who we select to work for us, or we try to be. And it's generally on temperament and character. That's what you're recruiting on.
Yeah.
And they get all the trust from day one, and it's there until otherwise it's needed not to be.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, well, we think you're the right person, so why wouldn't we trust you to do what you think's right? Go ahead and do what you need to do.
Because there is always that limbo situation with employment, isn't there, where somebody's coming asking essentially for a role within your business for remuneration, they're willing to put their faith and trust in your business going forward for their career, and you really should extend that trust back to them and say, look, we're going to give you every opportunity we can to do your job as effectively as you can and progress your career as effectively as you can.
That's what we tried to do. We tried to create that environment where it's nice to come in, but equally they can have the flexibility to work from home and at different timings, because people's lives are just... There's so many different things, and we have so many dogs in the office these days.
Do you? People bring the dogs in?
Well,
There's no way that'll happen here.
I'm the main one.
No way. I'm glad you didn't bring yours today, because it'd be outside.
So that was one of the main reasons I got a dog. I was like, well, everyone else brings dogs in, so I'm going to get my own dog now. So I've got dogs. My dog comes in all the time, probably too much.
So just going back to when you qualified then, so you went from the company you were at, qualified, then came to James Legal.
Yeah, that's right.
And you've done property-related stuff then, have you, pretty much all the way through?
Well, a mix of things. It's generally commercial litigation. I sort of fell into the landlord and tenant stuff, probably as I started James Legal. I was working with Kelly Bannister a few times on different things, and she got me introduced to the HLA, and I ended up meeting landlords there. And you were like, well, there's not actually that many people who specialise in landlord and tenant things in the whole, and sort of South Bank area. There's probably loads out there watching this thing. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
But at the time, the perception was, well, there's not really anyone who's got their hands around it.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'm comfortable with this area of law. It's quite, not niche, but it's complex. It's the finer details, things that and landlords don't like.
No.
Mistakes, and obviously every single little bit of time costs them. So obviously everything's got to be bang on, and the legal side of it's quite complex. The court, you're up against the courts, which is the main problem, because they do not want landlords to succeed. They're the last line between sort of social housing. So for them, they've got to make sure that every single case is absolutely bulletproof. If there's any sort of chink or slight possibility they can adjourn or throw a case out, they'll jump all over it. So it's got to be bang on, and I just started doing it that way. And
plenty of work out there, I would imagine, as well.
There was quite a bit at the time, and it stood us in good stead, really, because I think the landlords I spoke with, a lot of them were like, we can't get hold of the solicitor, they're too expensive. I'd email them, I'll get a call back 3 days later. So I thought, well, all I've got to really do is be accessible and know my stuff. And that's all it started with, and that's what it was built on, really. Just the service and communication.
Aside from like your typical eviction type work, which I'm sure you do loads of, which we'll come on to in a bit, there must be other types of disputes that landlords can get into, I guess.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, the housing disrepair stuff's quite common these days.
Right.
They'll follow usually after a notice is served. So you'll make an application for possession, then a tenant will wham in a big claim saying, well, actually, this property is damp, I've got a bad chest, I have done for years, this has cost me all these health problems, and you'll get counterclaims like that usually follow from that.
Is that quite regular then? Because I've never seen that, really.
It's becoming more regular, becoming more regular but now, because the courts are saying to the tenants, well, there's your defence, file a defence, put your argument forward. And like, if you're saying to a layman who's in a property, well, okay, well, I'll put a defence forward then, and they're getting told by a lot of advisors, citizens advice, for instance, get it in, it'll buy you 42 days. So why wouldn't they? And
minimum 42 days, sometimes
a lot of them
money.
know how to work the system.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that's everybody, obviously it's not.
Yeah.
But all the ones I deal with, I'd say there's a good 50% who are just simply doing it for more time, at the landlord's expense.
Do you think that's something we're going to see more of then, as evictions get?
Yeah, because there's simply no housing. I mean, the council literally says to tenants, don't move out until you've got an order of possession.
Nightmare, innit? We have that all the time.
So they're basically pushing it through the courts as much as they can.
Renters Reform Bill, probably the hottest topic for people in your position at the minute.
Yeah.
What's going to happen there? Do we even know yet?
No, not really. I think it's been read in Parliament. I think there's a chance that it'll be part of one of the manifestos next year. I think that's what the Conservative Party was sort of hinting at, that they're going to run with it as one of the manifesto pledges next year in the run-up to an election. So I think it'll come in probably next year, if anything. When it happens, I think overall, a lot of landlords will probably disagree with me, but I think it's probably a good thing in general. But logistically, I think the problem they've got is actually it working in practice in the courts, because the court system's the bottleneck. There's not enough judges, there's not enough court staff. There's probably, as I said to you before we started, 50, 60 hearings a week in Hull, just blocklisted. And if the Renters Reform Bill goes through in its current setup, every single eviction is going to go through the court. So you're talking about delays beyond, you can double it, really.
Yeah.
You're talking 2 or 3 months before you'll get a case heard. That's not good for anybody. It's not good for the tenant, it's not good for the landlord.
Yeah, and if they abolish 21, which is obviously what they're suggesting they're going to do,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think it could be a good thing as long as that Section 8 gets a little bit easier to enforce.
I think it will. There'll be new criteria, but they're just dragging it out longer. So, for instance, now it's sort of like 2 months of arrears, Section 8, you've got 14 days you can apply to the court. If a landlord's really on it, the minute they hit that 2 months of arrears, get the Section 8 notice served, and then in 2 weeks think, well, do I want to be making an application to the court now? Because is this person ever going to pay? Well, they've never missed 2 months before. I think the tenant's now struggling. They're not coming back to me. I'm trying to speak to them. So I've got no choice but to apply to the court. If they get the application in, you're looking at probably sort of 6 to 8 weeks before you get your possession. So you might have another 2 months of rental loss. They're now talking about extending the notice period to 4 weeks. So now that's another 2 weeks. Then it'll go to a court hearing in a system that's already overcrowded. So that'll be probably another month and a half. It'll just double the length of time. So the cost to landlords all the time whilst that property is not earning any rental income. But then the tenants are just getting CCJs against them anyway.
Well, yeah.
So it's no good for them either because their debt's just
Because then they're going to struggle to get a place where they move on to.
So many times I sit in front of judges and just say, look, it's in, because the tenant will say, I just need a bit longer, I'm possibly getting a new job. But it's quite clear they can't afford the rent. It's as simple as that. And it's not in anyone's interest, particularly the tenants, to let the tenancy continue because it'll just put them in a deeper hole. In the
So
long run.
what would you say, maybe more of a question for me to answer, I guess, but what would you say landlords could be doing to prevent this situation arising? Going back to the issues with counterclaims, I would say they're probably doing more regular inspections of the property and documenting it throughout the tenancy to make sure that the tenant can never say, you've left this damp issue for the last 3 years and not done anything. The landlord needs some written evidence that isn't the case, I guess. Would that help, that sort of thing?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's the main thing. Annual inspections have got to be an absolute minimum, especially now moving forward.
Yeah.
The gas safety checks, everything else, they need those anyway. I mean, Section 8, so you can get those through without those sometimes, but the courts don't really like it. They prefer landlords who are really on it. If you've got a tenant who's made 3 or 4 complaints that have never been actioned, then the court will look at that landlord and think, well, this isn't great. And if they can exercise the discretion in any way, they'll do it.
Because we've had it quite a lot, really, when we've taken management over from self-managing landlords, and we always welcome their business, for the record. But quite often we'll find that the gas safety's not been given to the tenant on move-in, and all these Section 21 compliance sorts of things. It's always been a case of, oh yeah, I didn't get around to that, or I never did it, I didn't realise I had to do it. Those sort of excuses just don't wash anymore, do they? It's just not good enough, really.
Yeah. I think if you're a landlord, you've either got to be really clued up as to what you're doing, or you've just got to get an agent to do it. You need someone to organise it for you. If you think for a second, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, I can find out, but I'm not 100% sure, but I do want to invest in, I'd say you just need to get an agent to do it. Someone who does it every day, organised, they know what's required, they'll stay on top of it. Because if not, then you'll end up with all sorts of problems.
Yeah, I mean, we've had it, even from agents, to be honest, we've taken it on and it's been a problem, but that's by the by. Property investment yourself then, you're a youngish guy, yeah? How old are you?
38.
Right, okay. Yeah. That did surprise me, that, when I found that out.
38, yeah. No children, you say, so
right, kept you young.
Just yet, yeah, but I'm feeling a bit older now.
You're 8 years older than me, Simon.
A couple of years ago, Nick Miller said to me, I became MD sort of just before COVID, I think it was. And Nick was off for a bit and came back. And he historically was always the one who looked way older than me and haggard.
Right.
And he
is he that much older than you?
Oh yeah, he's like 53.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he came in one day and he'd had a bad back, you see, but he got it all sorted. He was really good. Big tan, he'd been away for a bit. Yeah. He had a back operation, so he was absolutely on top of the world when he came back. And I'd been at James Legal on my own for a couple of months. And he was like, you look ancient. I'd aged about 10 years in about 2 weeks, I think. So it's catching up with me now.
You must see all the negative side of property investment all the time. It must put you off investing yourself, does it? Have you got any investment properties yourself? Would you ever?
Actually, I mean, I had one sort of like 10, 15 years ago, but it was never something I'd looked at. I considered it maybe a little bit, probably about 10 years ago. And then, the faff of dealing with it, to be quite frank, in terms of what you're going to get out of it. It's a long-term thing for me. It
definitely is, yeah.
I thought I'd have to stick the money into it and then just leave it for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, you need to be starting younger than 38, that's for sure.
So I think it's too late now.
So going forward then, James Legal, they've come very fast into the marketplace, in my opinion, from my outsider's perspective. And seems to be doing really well. You've got 2 sites, one in Hull, one in Beverley. Yeah. And what's the plan going forward for you and for the company?
Good question. It's been open about 14 years now, but it's sort of rapidly grown, I would say, in the last sort of 10. Maybe especially since we opened the Beverley office. And again, I think for us, you try and build it around recruitment and the right people, as opposed to thinking, let's get the premises and then fill it. It was sort of the other way around with us. Yep. We were keen on getting certain individuals in places before we even considered opening offices there. So it's sort of about sensible expansion. I mean, you're up against massive
big marketing budgets.
And you're talking about people and brands who the generational family ties to businesses which are impossible to crack into. But I think for us, it's always just been about service levels. And if you can get that right, then you can get the communication bit right with the client and interact with the client. That's all we've ever tried to do, and hope then everything else follows. And we've sort of like been successful around that. So that's the core things we're trying to stick with. Good communication, good service. And that's literally all it is. It sounds really basic.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons I asked you to come today, to be honest, is the fact that I know James Legal niche a little bit in property-related stuff. Or you seem to anyway, from what I've seen, but I might be wrong there. But yeah, it's always good to get the perspective of someone who's, living and breathing it. It's particularly in the eviction stuff, which seems to be changing all the time. And I know it's always been a bugbear for landlords not fully understanding what goes on in the eviction process. And I think to have the support of, firstly, an agent maybe to help you do it, but also yourselves when things go really wrong, is always useful.
Yeah, definitely. And as I said, for us, it's always just been the communication point, because historically that's what we're hearing back from the clients as the main issue. And if you can get that rapport with clients and you can get the communication point right, then the service should follow, because the clients will understand more as to what you're doing. You might get solicitors will go off and do the same job, but the client's perception of what they're doing is the key bit. Don't get me wrong, you'll get some clients who just expect to speak with you 3-4 times an hour, which is just not feasible.
It's always the case.
But obviously, like, if you can speak with them on important points once or twice a week and just keep them updated all the time, people, you'd be surprised what difference it makes. And they understand more then. That's the key thing.
Yeah. I know you and your team, Simon, are very obliging when Ultralets come to you asking for bits of information. I guess that's probably because we pass business your way. But if there are some landlords or investors watching this that maybe think, I'd love to ask a few questions to a legal expert, but I'm worried about the bill I'm going to get, which I did joke about at the beginning of this podcast. But, do you offer advice to people?
Yeah, most agents will pass landlords to me or queries. I'll just say, just get them to call me. There's no charge. Right. So if they have anything to run past me, you're better off just calling and saying, well, this is a situation, what do you think I should do? We'll tend to have 15, 20 minute, half an hour chats with landlords on multiple occasions free of charge, just to run through their options. Because there's no great point in having a sit down meeting and charging an hour and all of that stuff. There's no need for that. It's better off just to get some quick free advice. Sometimes landlords say, right, I can do that, I'll sort that, no problem. If not, they say, look, I don't feel comfortable doing it, I need to instruct you to do it, fine. But they're better off getting that quick free advice anyway. So the best thing to do is just contact us. There's myself, there's Anna Bisbee, Lily Simpkin, there's the wider team who can help as well. So there's quite a few people there who can run through situations and give quick free advice to a landlord that might make the difference in terms of timings.
Good. Really appreciate you coming in, Simon, having a chat with me today. And if anybody's watching this and does want some assistance on anything legal, but particularly property related, Simon's your man. And we'll put this on his social medias as well, so get in touch with him. And if you've got any questions for him and you want to field them through us, or any questions relating to the management side of things, you know where I am. Thanks for watching.